Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Let's just get right into some more paranormal encounter stories from Reddit. Today we're going to be reading some more life after death stories from Reddit. Our first post is called Life After Death Signs and was posted by SusieQ73069. I'm curious as to what you have seen or experienced that may have led you to believe in life after death. My son was 23 when he died. He had always wanted a snake. I told him it would be over my dead body before he got one. Well, at his funeral, when we were at the cemetery, a snake crawled into the crowd and slithered along top of the vault. We were all stunned. We thought it was his way of telling me he finally got his snake. It was over his dead body, though. His ex-girlfriend that got him interested in owning a snake took it home with her to add to her snake collection. It bit her a little while later. We figured it was his way of saying to put the snake back at the cemetery, which she did. The funeral director still remembers it, and that was 21 years ago. S.A. Starling writes, "People are going to think I'm crazy, but this is my proof in life after death. Trigger warning for those who need it. I'm about to talk about death, self-unaliving, and please do what's best for you, and don't read this if you are not in a good place or if this will hurt you. My husband died when I was 25. It wasn't unexpected, I guess. The doctors had been making dire predictions and whatnot, but he was so vibrantly alive. He was so present, so active, so engaged. I fooled myself into thinking that they must be wrong and that there was no way this story could end in any way that I didn't write it. I assumed he would be fine, and so when he died, right in front of me, with my hand on his chest, feeling his heart stutter and stop, I was devastated. Beyond devastated. My parents came to help me. His mom and stepmother were already there. His dad and his dad's wife came. His whole family came for the funeral. No one would let me be alone or go anywhere alone. I stopped eating or drinking. I literally ate and drank nothing for 3 days and didn't care or feel it. My mother had to force me to eat and drink. I cried so hard and so often that my nose and eyes bled. I still feel sorry for the poor funeral director who was there when it happened the first time, and I'm sure it was upsetting to watch. During this time, all I could think about was the loss of him and the gaping chasm that was my future. 40-something years alone without him. It seemed like it stretched into forever, and I was genuinely sure I'd somehow landed in hell. I knew I had to at least get through the funeral, get him cremated, bring him home. I also knew I couldn't stay in the house we had been renting. I couldn't afford the rent by myself, so I needed to pack up the entire house so that it wouldn't be a burden on anyone else. I planned to get that done and then unalive myself. I didn't tell anyone that plan. I let everyone think that I was just grieving, just trying to adjust, taking care of things and just trying not to think about anything. But the whole time I was planning this, counting down the days, cataloging what still needed to be done. I was rarely left alone, but in the moments I talked to my husband. I told him my plan. I told him I was coming to him soon. When I had finished packing up the house, I got a call from a friend. This was a woman I met when we both got our service dogs. I had never spoken to her in person because when she came to the classes, she was dealing with an intense agoraphobia. She had been married to a police officer who her in every way possible, harming her to the point that she suffered brain damage and had seizures, and made it all but impossible to leave him. But she had managed to escape him, at great cost, and built a life for herself, and she was dealing with the damage he did to her. No one in the class spoke to her. We knew it would be too hard on her in person. But after class ended and we all got on the service dog Facebook page, a lot of us had reached out to her, explaining that we had wanted to talk to her but didn't want to overwhelm her, and asking if we could be friends virtually, if that would be easier for her. She had accepted, and she and I had been friends for about 3 years by this time. During those 3 years, she had often reached out to me at random times, but every time she did, she just knew things. She knew if I was having a hard time, if something had happened, weird things like that. And it wasn't like I posted something and she read it from the tone. She would just reach out with no discernible reason for it. So she called me, and she explained that since she started having seizures, she had started receiving visits from dead people. She knew how crazy it sounded. She didn't spend much time trying to convince me. She just got right into it. She said that my husband kept coming to her house and wanted to talk to me. I didn't believe her. I thought she was trying to be kind, but really missing the mark. My loss gaped up inside me, and I was viscerally angry. I felt like this was just a cruel way to give me false hope, and I wanted to cry, scream, throw things. Instead, I tried to stay calm. I told her I was sorry, that I knew she was trying to help, but I didn't think she was talking to my husband. I said if she really was, then she should ask him what the watchword was. The watchword was something my husband had come up with before he died. I worked retail, and he had called me once when I was trying to leave, but got caught up talking to a difficult patron. He listened to me talk to this man and knew that I wasn't in danger, but that I was distressed. So, when I got home, he said he wanted us to have a watchword, a code word that if it was ever said, the other person would know that the other needed help and needed them to come and get them. He picked his, I picked mine. We never talked about it again. We never told anyone else. Since he had died, I'd been talking to him, and one thing I said was, if I decided to live longer than my plan, if I ever decided to visit a psychic, then I would ask them the watchword and use it to know if the psychic was bullshitting me or not. He and I had watched a lot of stuff about the ways that psychics scam people. I was honestly skeptical, and I thought it was really bullshit. So I told her to ask him the watchword, and she said, "Husband's name, Clarice wants to ask you what the watchword is." "Lighthouse." I said, "I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?" And she said, "Lighthouse, but that doesn't make any sense. Y'all don't live near a beach." I started sobbing because his watchword was lighthouse and mine was spotlight. I never had images or anything of a lighthouse in my house, on my Facebook, nothing. Neither did he. There was no possible way she could have known that was the right one. The odds of her guessing it out of the millions of words. My husband spoke German, English, a little French, and a little Italian. He could have picked any watchword out of any of those languages. She couldn't have known. She couldn't have known. I called her 3 months later and asked her why she called me that day. She told me that day was the 4th time my husband had visited her. The first time, he told her I was going to unalive myself, and she told him that was absurd, that I wouldn't do that, and I was just grieving, and he shouldn't worry. She said he was disgruntled, but left. The second time, he was more urgent. He insisted to her that I was going to unalive myself, and she had to stop me. She blew him off again, and she said that when he left, he told her he was going, but he'd be back. That I was going to do it, and she had to help him stop me. The third time, he was even more insistent. She blew him off again, and she said he was very agitated when he left. The fourth time, she said he was in barely controlled panic. He said, "She's packed up the house. That was the last thing on her list. She still has the weapon. She's going to do it. You have to let me talk to her. You have to call her. You have to stop her. She's finished with the house, and there's nothing stopping her now. She keeps telling me she's coming, and you have to stop her. Please, please, you can't let her do this." I hadn't told anyone this. I had never talked to another living soul about this. She knew the watchword. She knew my plan, down to the last thing on my list, and down to the way I was going to do it. How could she know these things unless he told her? How could she know? He called me Blackbird, a play on our last name, and me singing. He told her I'd stopped singing, and that was true. Since he'd died, I'd stopped, because it felt like I was disrespectful if I sang while he was gone. I couldn't do something I enjoyed, that made me happy, because how could I feel happy when he was gone? He told me to sing. He said he loved me. He said I had to stay. I'm not crazy. I can't explain this. I was a skeptic, and this offered me proof in a way that I personally couldn't deny. Take from this what you will. Maybe you'll think I'm crazy, but I believe. I believe energy is neither created nor destroyed. I believe death is not the end of us, but rather transforming us into the next phase of our existence. I don't know anything beyond that, but I know that my husband reached out after his death. I know that I'm still alive because he worked to make sure I knew he wanted me to live. I know he loved me. Wow, OP. That was really sad, but also beautiful at the same time. I'm so sorry for your loss, but at least you know that he loves you, he's waiting for you. That must be so, so comforting. And user OKMarionberry2875 comments, "A few weeks after my mother died, I was in the depths of grief. She came back by. I woke up at 3 a.m. to hear her little dog barking excitedly. The dog, who had refused to enter the bedroom since Mother died, was standing on Mother's bed on the side where she slept, barking and wagging like crazy. Suddenly, the bedroom was full of the only perfume she used, and it was very strong. That was always our joke, that she wore too much perfume. I sat on the foot of the bed. I said, "Mama, thank you for letting me know that you're okay. Don't appear to me, though, because it will scare the shit out of me. I love you." I began to recover from her loss that night. She always knew the right thing to do for me. Dodecagon says, "In the days before my dad died, he said he would tap on the glass from the other side. The morning of his death, I was going through his things, looking for photos for the funeral. He was a photographer and had literally thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of old photographs archived. As I pulled a stack of photos from a pile, one fell out. It was of his hand, pressed up against glass. I also think he visits me through blue herons. They were one of his favorite animals. I've had some incredible close encounters with them since he died. I've had one fly literally feet in front of me. Another one let me stand next to it for 30 minutes without becoming frightened." Skya 1982 says, "My family is pretty toxic, and as an adult, I chose to limit my contact with them just a few times a year. When my grandma passed, nobody told me. Grandma and I had always been close. We shared a love of soft, pretty things, of creating, and of reading. We used to make jewelry together and clothes for my dolls, and she always kept art supplies for me to play with. In her 90s, she developed dementia and went to live with my aunt about 500 miles away. My aunt hated my dad. Valid, but she wasn't any picnic herself. And that, plus Grandma's dementia, made communicating with Grandma very difficult and traumatic, so I hadn't talked to her in a few months. Walking into my bedroom while getting ready for work one morning, I heard my grandma's voice, clear as day, say, 'This is a very pretty room. I like how you did this.' I paused for a moment to soak in the warm feelings, then shrugged it off and hustled off to work. Late that evening, I came home exhausted. I took a shower, then was moving around the house, getting ready for bed. I was working 60 hours a week at the time, and honestly, I had very little life outside of work. I started a round of laundry, unloaded the dishwasher, and made sure I had work clothes for the next day. My only thought was to get the bare minimum done so I could get some sleep and then do it all again in a few hours. Suddenly, in the midst of doing all of this, I heard Grandma's voice again. She sounded wistful and sad. "You don't really make anything anymore, do you?" I chalked it up as just another one of the random stabs of guilt I occasionally experienced as a survivor of emotional abuse, and told myself to lighten up. I might not be creating much now, but I'm working my ass off. My staff are depending on me. I won't always have to be this busy, and there will be time for more me stuff later. Just because I'm not creating now doesn't mean I'm never going to anymore. I finished up what I was doing and went to bed, thinking I'd call and check on Grandma on my next day off. I slept just a few hours and woke up, wide awake, around 4:30 a.m. I had been dreaming a sweet dream of Grandma, and I knew. I went to my computer and typed in her name and found an online obituary. She had died several days before. I think Grandma knew that the family wasn't telling me, so she came to say goodbye herself. I read somewhere once that souls visit the familiar on their way out, and I like that thought. Her soul came and found mine, gave me a little validation and support, and a little push to stay true to myself. She visits me occasionally in my dreams still, and sometimes, when I'm painting or making something, I'll think to myself how much she would like it. Oh, all three of those stories were just so beautiful. I do believe that animals can see things that we can't, and so it's so cool that, okay, Marionberry's mom was able to stop by and give both of them some comfort and help get through the grieving process. And Dodecagon's photographer father found the most perfect way to tell her that he's still watching out for her and that they'll be together again someday. That was so cool. And then Skya's grandma coming by to say goodbye and make sure that she's still doing what makes her happy was just so sweet. It's just a good reminder that our loved ones would want us to try to be happy when they're gone, just like we would want them to be. Roxoff80 says, "Could of course be a coincidence, but my dad died unexpectedly 20 years ago. I remember looking in the bathroom mirror after his funeral and asking him to show me a sign that he was around and okay. I was like crying and asking him. A few minutes later, me and my good friends are driving to my mom's house for the after party. My dad always said he wanted a big party when he died. I stop at a 7-Eleven for my friend to grab something. He gets out of the car and I turn on the radio. It's Dead Flowers by the Rolling Stones. My dad used to request this song all the time on the local college radio station, and he would dedicate it to me. He would never tell me that he did it, but over the years I had heard the dedication a few times, so it was our song. Anyway, this is not a song that you're going to hear on the mainstream radio station at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. It was crazy, and I've always felt it was him. Well, I gotta say, I like to consider myself somewhat knowledgeable about classic rock, having grown up with it on the radio my whole life. And I don't know if I've ever even heard that song before, so I believe it was also more than just a coincidence. That's pretty cool. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit like and subscribe if you did. And if you've had any creepy paranormal encounters you'd like to share, please share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Until next time, stay safe out there and don't turn off the lights.